Hey guys, Christian here. I'm here today with the Brown Gent. We've got some really cool DFK news to hit on. We're going to go through what's been happening in all of DFK, what's going on right now when it comes to the Holiday partnership, what went on in the AMA this afternoon, what are the token prices doing. Not only that, we're going to jump into some other tokens and some stock market news, what's happening in all the realms of finance right now. But before we do, for those people who don't know who you are, Brown Jet, go ahead, introduce yourself. How'd you get into Web3 and how are you helping people right now with their entire investment portfolio?
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Christian. Thanks for having me on. I think many of you guys know me as, I am a DeFi Kingdoms bull. I think, I got into like XRP. Ironically, XRP was the first crypto I ever bought back in like, I think it was like 2017. I had friends who bought Bitcoin. They were bragging about it during a dinner once about, oh my God, it's like 17,000 bucks. This is actually a token that I ignored when I was younger because I thought I knew everything. And the biggest lesson for me was, hey, there's always something to be learned, even if you're listening to somebody who typically you wouldn't listen to. By closing my ears to it, I missed out on buying a Bitcoin like a dollar. And yeah, I got an XRP at like 10, 15 cents, wrote it up to a couple bucks back before that last mini correction. And since then, I didn't touch crypto until like 2019, end of 2019, sorry, end of 2020, where I bought Bitcoin and a bunch of other tokens. And DeFi Kingdoms was really my first foray into the world of DeFi, like, going off sort of the traditional centralized exchanges and stuff. So pretty cool. Yeah, and basically, I just try to help people because I think authenticity is super important in this space. There are very few people like Christian. You're one of them who's very authentic, who's very genuine, who shares really what you think is going on. A lot of people in this space, unfortunately, they come here and think they can make a quick buck at the expense of others. I think it's super important to be transparent and help the community, right? Like a lot of people talk about how crypto is not growing, that Web3 is kind of stalling. Well, it's because a lot of people are sort of self-serving, and it's by building communities and stuff that we kind of uplift everyone together, and we do that by sharing information, right? We can all have different approaches, but just sharing information is key because then you can make your own choice and your own decision. I think that's the best thing, and that's what I try to do. So.
Yeah, definitely. And, I love your channel. I know that you've been working on it recently and you've been adding a lot of content and value there. It's really cool to see what you've been up to. Like for the last month or so, you've created so much more content and you continue to put out amazing videos, not only on DFK, but on investing as a whole. And, I think that if people don't get a chance to see this, you should definitely go out to the Brown Gents YouTube channel, take a look at it. There's just, so many cool things that are going on. I know that you brought up a lot of this stuff when we were at 3XP in Los Angeles, but you continue to put out all this content. What's been some of the favorite videos that you've done recently?
My favorite videos for sure are the ones that are more related to like the Web3 space because I find that a lot of people talk about companies, and I mean, we're in a space where whether you're in Web3, whether you're in the stock market, any sort of asset, there's a ton of fear around like inflation, ton of fear around rising interest rates. We're not at a point where like this stuff's going to skyrocket. But when you're talking about games, you're talking about having fun, you're talking about distracting people from like everything else going on. And one of the really cool things that brought me to DeFi was when I buy a Tesla stock, I got to stare at that Tesla stock. It doesn't like do anything for me. When I was buying Jewel, oh look, I can summon, I can do all these other things with it, and it was sort of like, okay, well, it's kind of keeping me preoccupied. So like when the money's not going up per se, like I'm still like preoccupied with it, and it allows us to do more, right? Like it's kind of like you can build your own little mini dividends and such. So that part's really cool. Something I learned, Christian, is I've been doing a lot of live streams. I'm gonna stop doing that. So like I do the live streams because I'm very slow at editing, like usually like 4 to 5 hours. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna like record those videos the same way through a live stream and then post them through the video section. And apparently YouTube will push those videos way more than they would if I did it under live. So some alpha for anyone here who's making videos.
You and me both, brother. I know that editing videos is a chore, and it's nice to go live every once in a while because you can sit down with somebody really cool. You can get a good interview in. You can talk about what's going on in the markets, and not have to worry about going back and spending that 4 or 5 hours. On the short side of things, it could be as long as 10 or 20 hours if you do an extended video with somebody. So yeah, those video editing sessions I definitely don't look forward to. One of the videos that you shot up here, which I really enjoyed watching, was the Mara stock. And I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, but when we were in LA, you brought up Mara to me, Marathon, and I was like, Bitcoin miners, you're really into Bitcoin miners? And you explained the entire thing to me. And at the end, I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. And when you talked to me about it, it was at $9. Of course, now, if I had bought it back then, it's up 16.50, so it's almost doubled. But you want to go through Mara real quick and what they do?
Yeah, so basically, it's a Bitcoin mining company. They sort of buy miners and they install them in like certain infrastructure. Sometimes they don't even own the places they install the equipment. What they do typically is they hold all the Bitcoin that they mine. So as you guys know, there's a cost or an inherent cost to mining Bitcoin. You know, overhead, sort of production, sort of the power output, and everything else. So when Bitcoin was like around 18,000, Mara was sitting at like a couple bucks, like $3 back in December. And then as the price of Bitcoin goes up, it's almost like you own a leveraged version of Bitcoin because when you buy the shares of the company, that company holds, I forget how much Bitcoin on hand, but they just hold it. So like you're not only are you investing in their sort of earning power or their sort of mining potential, but you're also investing in the price of the Bitcoin they're holding. So as the price of Bitcoin goes up, to give you an example, and the reason I'm super bullish on this company, I think everyone here is in DeFi Kingdoms believes there'll be another bull run. That bull run for DeFi Kingdoms doesn't come before the bull run for Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin all-time high sits at 68 or 69,000 US. At that time, Mara was $90. So
Wow.
we are like half the price pretty much, or a little bit less than half the price of where Bitcoin was at all-time highs. And to do that tomorrow, that's a 5x from here, or like 400% increase from here to get there. So I own Bitcoin on a ledger, and I also own a ton of Mara stock because you know what? I'm bullish on Bitcoin, and I'm okay waiting. This is one of those few stocks. I know I always tell you guys take profits. I was taking profits, and that's the only thing I'm kicking myself on. I have like over 3,000 shares of Mara right now. I don't plan on selling any of them. Obviously, do your own thing, financial advice, whatever. But I'm super bullish on Bitcoin. I'm super bullish on everything crypto, and I think it all starts with Bitcoin. So this is the
Yeah.
biggest company that mines it. There's a couple others. I don't like to diversify in that because this is super decentralized in the sense of where their mining capacity is. So yeah.
Yeah, love that. I love when you share content that can help anybody out there, right? All the different investment, there's so many different ways to invest in stocks and bonds and mutual funds and crypto. And when it comes down to it, it's like we're here to help people. We're here to inform them. We're here to give them, what our advice is. I always talk about the cryptos that I own, what I own, what I have conviction in, and you're the same way. I mean, when you get behind something, you get a chance to see how it performs over time, and if you like it, why you like it, and then you can explain it to other people. If they like it, great, invest right alongside of me. If you don't like it, there's plenty of other things that are out there. One of the things that came up that I thought I'd share that showed up on Twitter today was Halliday, who quoted me last night and Bolon from our previous live stream. And I'm going to have them on the channel next week on Friday, where I'm going to talk to their CEO and chief marketing officer as well about what Halliday's doing. I think that their partnership is going to be just so incredibly bullish for not only DeFi Kingdoms, but for Web3 gaming as a whole. And I know that when we're at 3XP, 90% of the people that were talking out there were talking about like, how do we onboard more people into gaming? And it was like so difficult to get people into MetaMask and get tokens from Bridge from one place to the other. And having a smart contract wallet, I think, is going to just do wonders for this space. What are your thoughts on the Halliday partnership and what's going on there with DeFi Kingdoms?
Long time coming. And Christian, I was saying this to you earlier, like you really called this super early when we were at 3XP. I think you said like, this is something they need. I think sort of your vision was, hey, can you give someone $20? they have sort of a starter kit, and like just being able to help people sort of on board and sort of, like if you think about like 15, 20 years ago when Amazon was like trying to get people to buy stuff online, people laughed, said we would never do it. And now people put their credit card in and have no problem doing it. This is sort of the next stage where people will now, feel comfortable going on to like a platform like DeFi Kingdoms or some other websites because they can log in with their social media, right? Stuff they're already used to doing. If they go on Facebook or if you go on some random website, sometimes they'll say, hey, do you want to log in with Facebook? Do you want to log in with your Gmail account? It all of a sudden starts normalizing that behavior and I think reduces a lot of the friction. And I remember when I first started DeFi Kingdoms and like that was my first time using a MetaMask wallet. Like actually, like I had it before buying NFTs. I didn't really know how to use it properly. So I got super anxious. Taking all of that out of there, because you remember, like a lot of people that we want to appeal to are gamers, and some gamers know crypto, some don't, and this really sort of opens the door for them. I think it's really cool. I'm super pumped they're doing it. It's one of many reasons to be bullish on DeFi Kingdoms.
Yeah, definitely. I know on today's AMA and Crypto Grady and Ogre were just doing this as well on a live stream, going over everything that they had to say. But on today's AMA, they talked about a lot of the alpha that's coming up. One of the big things that really got me was the crafting, which will come at some point in the future. But all the crafting items, the equipment that we're going to have is going to be ERC 721. And we talked about it really quickly before we started, how ERC 721 tokens are all unique, and therefore it gives everybody a huge advantage when you first start crafting because those items are going to be in demand. If you make a really cool enchanted sword or if you make a great pair of armor, anything like that, it's going to have a huge value to it. And so like we saw when things originally came into the realm of DeFi Kingdoms, things were selling for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And over time, as that got diluted, things went down in value. But realistically, I think that the crafting portion of this is going to be so huge, and I'm so excited about it. What are your feelings on, as we kind of transition from this bear market to the next bull market, what do you see happening with DFK?
I think it's important to look at your account and make sure you're set up for the long term. So, I do make posts about taking profits and selling stuff, but that's because I'm already believing that my account is set up for the long term. So like, if you guys want to check Spades investing, there's tons of ways you can look at my wallet. 7 Gen Zeros. I got like 40 mythic heroes. I got 30 mythic pets, something like that. Like I've got a bunch of assets that I'm very comfortable with. That being said, I also I'm like the one who likes selling like the shovels. So like I think when crafting comes out, I probably won't be crafting. I'll probably be selling all the stuff I make and renting out those pets with these special crafting bonuses to people so that they can go ahead and make their stuff. And like what I like to do is like I'm not very lucky typically. So I want to just like hand pick the stuff I want. So like I will sell all of the stuff and then I will go into the store and buy the ones I want. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts there? Like, are you going to be? I guess I know you like to just dive deep, right, Christian?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I really appreciate your value that you bring to the community when it comes to how you perceive things long term and short term. And I agree with you 100%. A lot of these things that you're preaching are not what people want to hear. Everybody wants to hear the hodl, right? Hold on for dear life, never sell anything, just, continue to hold on to these things until, they come back in value. But that's not the way investing should be done. If you're looking long term, you want to get out of a bear market. You want to diversify. You want to get away from the tokens and the different things, the stocks that are going down in value, and you want to get into the ones that are holding their value, if not increasing. So I thought one of the biggest things that you gave to people was, hey, I took some of my Jewel and I converted it into AVAX. And when I saw that tweet that you put out, and that was probably like, 4 or 5 months ago, I was like, why AVAX? And you're like, well, because AVAX is much better than Jewel. But I'm like, yeah, but ETH is way better than AVAX. So, it's just like when you have that mentality of like, oh, cool. Yeah, I kind of was thinking one thing, and then, yeah, you can actually do something a little bit better. Just like we talked about earlier, Bitcoin's going to be probably the first one to run again like they did last cycle. And then when Bitcoin goes up, Ethereum follows. And then when Ethereum follows, all of the altcoins follow. So you guys can take that as like history. That's been historic. That's not my opinion. It's just been history. That's probably going to repeat though. So if you look at that and you say, hey, if I get into Bitcoin, I don't have to hold on to it forever. I can just hold on to it until it starts to run up. And then once it does, I can convert that into ETH or into Jewel or into something else, because I know that at that point, all of the people that have been out of the market for the last 2 years are going to all FOMO back in, and you're going to see all these altcoins pump up in value because everybody's going to be searching for that next 100x or 1000x, that next Dogecoin, Pepe coin, whatever they're looking for. And the coins that really have value, like we know, are Jewel and all these DeFi Kingdoms tokens, because guys, week after week after week, and I had the great conversation with Bull on yesterday, we get AMAs from the team. We get insight. Brown Gent can tell you that most companies provide a little bit of insight once a quarter, at the most. And that quarterly insight that they're giving you is usually pretty watered down. It's never anything juicy, because they don't want to give you too high of a prediction and not be able to meet it. With DeFi Kingdoms, they're telling us what they're doing every single week. And so, we always get that insight that people don't really appreciate, that I think is just like, wow, we get a chance to see holiday partnerships and the Swipe Lux partnerships and all these other things that are happening, and go like, wow, these things are going to really boost the value over time. But those are kind of my thoughts. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree. I mean, the other thing, and this should also make you feel very confident with DeFi Kingdoms, how many projects have we seen actually just close shop, right? Like there are so many projects that sort of came up the same time DFK did. They sort of either gave up or had sort of like made mistakes that have cost them significantly. That being said, there are still projects who are funding for the bear market and everything. Um, do you know Crypto Clay? He said something very like I thought was very smart. The people who make the most money in bull market are the ones who bought it in the bear, and it's really a wealth transfer. So like if you're buying anything, whether it's Pokemon cards, stocks, crypto, if you're buying it in the bull market, you're really losing money to somebody who bought it in the bear. So this is fantastic opportunity, and DeFi Kingdoms, they've sort of showed us, hey, right now in the bear market, they're going full steam ahead and they're being very transparent with us on everything. I don't know of any company that would sort of let us, peek behind the curtain to this extent. And not just that, like, that's on the AMAs. You should see how much we find out when you go to the congresses, when you go to like 3XP, you get to hang out with Dreamer. When do you get to hang out with the president of a company? You know what I mean? That doesn't happen. Like when does the president of a company come have drinks with you and stuff? That doesn't happen normally. So like they're very approachable, and I recommend for any of you who are able to sort of make that happen to go to any of those congresses or any sort of event with DeFi Kingdoms people that's being hosted, try to do it. And the one thing I will say is for the Crystal, the AVAX thing that you just mentioned when I posted that, you're the only one who didn't ask me why I was taking out a DeFi Kingdoms, right? And in a strange turn of events, because I think that was in April, I put that money back into DeFi Kingdoms when we were sitting at the 3XP and I was buying that Gen Zero off Cookie Miner, right? I think what people don't understand is I just want like, it's not that I'm taking the money out of DeFi Kingdoms. It's like I want a piggy bank that's like sort of like keeps everything safe. So I have a piggy bank on Ethereum, I have a piggy bank on like Arbitrum, I got a piggy bank on Avalanche. That money can be used for whatever as long as it's a good investment. And hey, DeFi Kingdoms will continue to be good investment, so I just kept buying Gen Zeros.
Yeah, I love that. I remember that moment, vividly, when you were like, yeah, I just took my AVAX profits and I bought this Gen Zero that was undervalued. And I was like, oh, awesome. It's just interesting to see your mindset, because you think in terms of like, okay, what's my next step and what's undervalued right now and what's going to go up in value short term, rather than like having those long term, views of like, oh, I'm just going to buy this and hold on to it forever, which, that's fine. People will see that hopefully at some point here we'll hit that bull market and things will go back up. But one of my favorite sites to come to, and I'm sure that everybody knows about this, if you don't, go to DeFi Llama and check out what goes on in terms of the rankings when it comes to fees and revenues and which protocols, and this is all of blockchain. This is all different chains, Ethereum, Arbitrum. You can sort by whatever you want. But Brown Jen and I had a really good conversation, because the DFK ecosystem is basically, a set of tokens. And I know that on Winning Wednesdays, you go through most of them, but, everybody thinks of Jewel, Crystal, Jade, maybe Clay as being the only tokens that are available. But the Synapse Bridge, which to me is, completely undervalued. There's Avalanche, which a lot of people definitely know about and use because of the subnet that DFK is on. And then there's Ethereum as a whole. And guys, Ethereum, it may not be the sexy choice and may not be the token that's going to 100x, but it is the safe value accrual. They create the most fees. And one of the sites I love going to as well is the crypto fees. And I know that I tweeted out about this probably 5 or 6 months ago, and you caught it. And I was like, here are all the fees that accumulate over time on all of these different dApps and all these different protocols. And as you can see, obviously Ethereum is huge on top. But look at Aave. I mean, the one-day fees they got were over $3 million. And then you've got Uniswap, and everybody's like, oh yeah, Uniswap. Everybody knows Uniswap, but it's like, getting close to $1 million a day. And then Bitcoin. So you look at the 3 coins that are up here, and everybody knows Ethereum, but maybe you're not as familiar with Aave, Uniswap, and then Bitcoin, of course. But then I came down here, and this was where GMX, the fees have really fallen off tremendously. It used to be $500,000-$600,000 a day. Now it's $200,000, and that's been really affecting their value. But out of all these crypto fees right here, maybe you can explain to people, as in with stocks, we're looking at kind of the PE ratio. What is the earnings that these companies are bringing in? And then what is the actual market cap of these companies as a whole? And which ones do you like?
Yeah, so like the basic idea behind like a PE ratio, and like you may have heard it in stocks, is like you look at the value of the stock and then you sort of divide it by sort of the earnings that it creates, right? And a lot of times, you look at it from a market capitalization standpoint, because what people fail to understand sometimes is like a stock can be like $100 and another stock can be $500, but the stock is $100. If there's more shares of it, it just has more value. It's a higher market cap sort of play. What you typically want to do is you want to find something with a low PE ratio, because something with a high PE ratio, which means that the discrepancy between market capitalization and their sort of earning power means you're paying way more for that. So like it's like saying, like in layman term, if you had $100, if it made you $1 for $100 versus if you made $10 from the $100, which one do you think is better? Right? The one that gets you a sort of faster way to do it. So like the 10 PE ratio in that example. What I would say about all of these, and sort of, when I look at this, when you consider the tons of tokens and tons of coins out there, I love this site that Christian shows, because this is money that's not just being created out of thin air. One of the arguments you'll always hear me make right around certain tokens is, yes, people will say, like, buy token X or buy token Y. And the reality is, for the token to have value, and if people, especially if people are selling it, so if somebody's making money, somebody's losing money, right? Here, those who are sort of holding the token, those who are, staking the token in some protocol, they're able to make money because they're earning the fees that are created, the fees that are generated here. I think that is really good. That being said, I do like GMX. I know they did cut their fee schedule, but GMX and sort of the bigger ones like SushiSwap and Uniswap are my favorite. I have friends who have Aave, but like they bought that on Wealthsimple and have no idea that like they should be holding and like putting it in a wallet, not on like a centralized exchange, right? Because right now Wealthsimple is making their money, not them. So it's bad.
Definitely. And you've got these fees right here, guys. You can see which protocols are profitable, which ones are bringing in enough to cover their expenses. And that's really what you want in any bear market, right? As you know, you want a company that's going to be creating profits month after month, year after year. And these are the companies that are going to be pretty safe in my terms, and those are the things that I really want to own in any type of a bear market. So when I came out here and I first saw GMX and where it was, a year ago, I was like, okay, great. I can take some of my funds that I've got and get them out of some of the riskier plays that I had, because I'd FOMO'd into all of these altcoins back in the bull run. And now I can put it into something that I know is going to generate profits, going to be around for the long term, and is going to be there. One of the things that I think that people kind of caught on to probably is MakerDAO. You talked about that a little bit. But what they're doing right now with their DAI profits is they're taking it and buying treasuries. So it's actually become kind of a syndicate for buying the treasury bills right now, the short-term treasury bills, 30 days, and getting 5%, 5.5% interest. And so they're making all of these fees off of that interest rate that they're getting from taking their DAI profits and putting them into treasury bills. And they're also starting to give some of that money back to the DAI holders. So the DAI is now generating, I think, 3% or 3.5%. So if you're a DAI holder, you're getting that. But also, too, the MakerDAO treasury is increasing. Therefore, I think the last time I looked, they were over $80 million a year in profits being generated. And their market cap is, $1 billion. But if you've got a company that's making, close to $100 million a year, that's only a 12 PE, right? So a $1.2 billion market cap is on a $100 million profitable company. It's just a 12 PE. And you look at other companies out there like Apple, who reported earnings today, they've got, forward earnings PEs of like 30 plus, which means that, they're double or triple what MakerDAO is. And MakerDAO is continuing to grow and continuing to make money. So some of these cryptos are undervalued, in my opinion, as opposed to a stock that's out there and kind of just treading water. Do you have any opinion on, which ones you value the most based on the fact that they are generating these types of fees?
So like, I'm kind of old school in this sense that like I like to support the ones that I use the protocols of, right? So like, because I use SushiSwap and Uniswap the most, they're the ones that I prefer. That being said, I still own some of the other tokens. It's just like, when I'll think to use something like maybe I use Synapse here and there, but like SushiSwap is my number one. Like I love it because of it's sort of the kind of one click to sort of move everything. Like, so you swap, let's say you're on, I don't know, Avalanche token, AVAX on Avalanche, right? And you want to make that like Arbitrum, ETH on Arbitrum. You can just select your start and your end state that you want, and it does everything for you, which is like really cool. And I think, the more simple we can make things so we don't have to sit there and click buttons and everything else, the better. Does that mean it's the best value? Probably not. It's the same reason why I invest in McDonald's stock. I love eating McDonald's, and it's obviously not like it. I would do way better to take that money and put it into Mara or Tesla or something else. But I kind of like pick stocks like that as well, just because I believe that you should invest in the companies and the services that you use as well, and kind of support them that way. The sort of like the other thing I would say is, to your point, Apple's PE ratio is so high, and ironically, it's considered a safety stock. At a PE ratio of over 30, it's considered a safety stock. Right? And these things, which have PE ratios, like, as you mentioned, like 10, 11, 12, way, way better, like risk to reward ratio. But because people can't access them or they don't know about it, they sort of remain on the periphery. So this is why when, hopefully, BlackRock submitted for a Bitcoin ETF, as crypto gets more mainstream, these deals won't exist. That's what people don't understand. Like, the reality is, and this is sort of why my investing approach is I'm always going to look for the highest, or the best risk to reward ratio. Right now, that is Bitcoin and Ethereum. Why? Because they have the lowest fail rates of anything, and they're super undervalued. If Bitcoin was 100,000, I would not be having that same sort of belief, because I would think, okay, the risk to reward is not there anymore. Right? Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, definitely. And, I appreciate your Warren Buffett style of investing too, right? Buy the companies that you use, that you go to every day, the McDonald's that are out there, the Pepsis, everything that people do inside of DeFi or inside of these should be looked at as like, okay, if I use it and I like it, then I should probably think about investing in it. If I haven't used it before, why FOMO into something that I don't know about? And when you were just talking about sushi, I was like, this is the first time I really looked at it. It's got a PE ratio or a price to sales ratio of 7. So it's like, they're bringing in all these fees, $50,000 a day in fees, and their market cap is only $100 million. So, you can kind of tell how good a company is by how much money they're generating and how much people like to use them. And of course, you've got the Uniswaps and the Aves and other companies that are going to be on the top right there. But yeah, it's just interesting to me that a lot of times people will buy stocks that they've never heard of before because somebody says, oh, this is a great company, you should invest in it. And one of the things I heard yesterday or a couple of days ago on CNBC was, 70+% of all publicly traded companies go to zero. And I don't think people talk about that very often, is that, all of these public companies aren't going to be around for the next 20 years. And a lot of these cryptos aren't going to be around for the next 20 years. But the ones that you use and the ones that you like probably will. The McDonald's that are out there, the Apples, the other ones are going to be around, the Microsofts. So you might as well look at the Aves and the Uniswaps and the the B&Bs and the GMXs, because those are the companies that are probably going to be here for the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. And if they're going to be here that long, and I know that they're going to probably go up in value over that time.
There's a big secret to that too. So so to exactly your point, just like most cryptos won't exist the same way, right? They'll sort of go to zero. There's a ton of failures in the stock market, and some companies, give it 100 years, right? Some companies can go from being one of the top performers in the S&P 500 to just completely vanish because they fail to adapt. The one of the sort of things that I've learned, and I learned from Meet Kevin actually, this was look into companies that have many different sort of pillars that they work on. Like Kimberly Clark is a really good example. Like if one thing went down for them, like it's not just a brand, it's just in the areas they operate, they've got so many other like things that will keep them afloat. This is really why I'm such a big proponent of Tesla, because it's not just electric vehicles, right? It's autonomous driving, it's robotics, it's like the insurance, right? There's tons of other businesses that exist within the core framework of the company that will ensure, like, even if they fail to pivot in the next 5 years or something in response to the environment, they should still do just fine, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. I still remember, Zealous looking at me when we were at 3XP and saying, "You didn't buy any Tesla when it was 100. What's the matter with you?" And and I remember thinking, like, you're right. And actually, when I picked you up at the airport, you're like, "Oh, cool, you have a Tesla. I don't even have a Tesla, but I own their stock." And I was like, I should be smarter than that. I mean, I obviously have a Tesla. We have
Okay.
a couple of them, and we drive them all the time. But they're more than just a car company. And until people start seeing them for the company that they are and what Elon's doing, and all the different products that they're bringing to market, it's like, okay, yeah, they're a car company like anything. No, they're just way, way beyond that. And it's an exponential company that is one of a generation. It's like the Apple of our time. And we're just actually getting to see the very small, the very surface of it. We haven't even really got into the good times for Tesla yet. It's like, okay, they've kind of settled into their game now and are producing a lot of cars, but the solar business is going to take off, the automation business is going to take off, the AI, the self-driving, all of that stuff. So why are you so bullish on Tesla? What's the big deal behind Tesla?
So it's also like their leader, like even though Elon Musk is sort of a little bit more recluse than normal from the company, he's a visionary, right? And like I've gone to tons of different marketing conferences, and you know, I'll give you one example. Imagine a world where right now, how about this, Christian? When you're driving and you're going somewhere, what are the biggest pain points for you?
Traffic, obviously, that's probably the biggest one, is just having to get around. And when I can put it on self-driving, especially when I'm on the freeway, it saves me half an hour, because then I can text, I can email, I can do all those things that you wish you could do when you were driving. And it's just it's such a time saver. I just like, it's almost like having a driver, so I love that.
What about when you go like downtown for dinner? What's the hassles there?
Finding parking, right? That's the biggest one, is like, having to pay now, especially in downtown San Diego, $60 or $80 to park. It's just a pain in the butt.
Can you imagine a future where that pain point becomes something positive? So like instead of parking your car, you just get yourself dropped off at that destination, and now your car goes onto their ride sharing program and actually makes you money while you're out there at dinner, right? No longer paying for parking, but the car is actually working and getting, and like, yes, you'll sort of share some revenue here, but these are some of the things that they're sort of working on, right? Like obviously autonomous driving has to sort of be perfect before this happens, but these are some of the things that like really change the game. And like if you think about somebody who drives, like that's probably one of the biggest pains, is having to drive, having to like park, right? Those are like two big frustrations, like the whole traffic thing. Now it's all about building a positive experience, right? Like you're sitting there in your Tesla, right? Like you remember we did the live show in the garage, like while we're waiting for we were waiting for Sergeant or something, I think, after. And then like not even that, but like just everything you can do with it, just like they want you to not feel like you're like driving. They revolutionize it. And they're doing the same thing with robotics. They're doing the same thing with so many other industries. I think Tesla will end up being like a sort of holding company that sort of has all this sort of technical innovation behind it. And the stock speaks for itself, right? Like people like I've had people tell me, oh, like yeah, 2020 it was sitting at a couple hundred, and these are like stupid people, of course, right? They say Tesla was sitting at $200 like during the pandemic. Look, it hasn't really changed. I'm like, really? It's had two stock splits since then. Like, what are you talking about, right? Like, I think it was a 3-1 and a 4-1 or something like that. It was incredible. Like the stock is super valuable, and looking at the actual stock price will not tell you how well it's doing. You have to look at the market cap and look at the market cap over time, because that market capitalization has been exploding. And this is why when Tesla was $100, $110 back in December, everyone I talked to, I'm like, hey, look, I tell people, there's a person at work. He's the head of our value access team. And I was buying Tesla from 200 and below. Every day he had a smile on his face. Like, I'm sure he didn't mean to, but he was like, oh, like you were so confident on Tesla. Every day it's down $10, it's down $20. He's like, are you still buying? I'm like, dude, like every time I get a paycheck, I'm just putting all my money into it. And like now, like Tesla last 2 weeks ago was $300. Like my average cost on Tesla was like 140 on the shares that I had purchased in that period of time. And I had already more than doubled it over like 6 months. And like, this is what people fail to believe or fail to understand is you, if the price goes down, your conviction shouldn't change unless something has changed, right? If the price has gone down because people are saying, hey, Elon's not spending time on the company, he's focused on Twitter, he's selling Tesla, and you know what? That's the main reason Tesla went down. He was selling a ton of shares. He owed $44 billion to Twitter, right, to purchase it. He got sort of trapped with this little meme thing that he tried to do, right? So he had to pay $44 billion, and he had to sell a lot of stock to make up for it. And there was a ton of buyers in that, and eventually they've now overwhelmed it. And obviously it's even higher now. So yeah.
Yeah, I do think that we're hitting that exponential age where companies like Tesla are just going to explode, and we'll start to see it before or after it happens, and we'll look back on it like, why wasn't I in that stock? But just like we were talking about earlier, you saw the opportunity and basically got some of your profits from other things and went into Tesla when it was down, and were able to take advantage of that. And it's just like anything else. When you're tracking something for such a long time, you get to see those cycles, and you start to see like, oh, it's gone up, it's gone down. And I feel right now it's dipped enough where it makes it an attractive buy to me. And I want to get back in on it. And that's the interesting thing, is when we're all following these tokens on a daily basis, we start to see, okay, yeah, I really like, I like Synapse Bridge, or I like Jewel, or I like Ethereum, and it's gone down to the point now where it makes it an attractive buy to me. But one of the things that I always like to look at too is just how much money are they making, right? Because that's the big thing. Is to me, it's like, okay, we've had speculation, and we had that speculation in 2020, 2021 with these brand new coins that popped on the market and weren't doing anything. But now we can actually see what the fees are. We can see how much money is actually going through the protocols. And when you see something like Aave, who has these fees of like in the last 7 days of $5 million, right? It's just like, wow, okay, they're just printing money right now. It's an interesting time for us. And then you see Tesla, who continues to have these free cash flow of like billions and billions of dollars. It's just like, wow, they're gonna do extremely well over time. But I like the fact that we're converging with blockchain, AI, robotics, and possibly even superconductors. I'm not a big I don't understand the tech behind it too much, but I understand if they get a superconducting material that's at room temperature and atmospheric pressure, that we're off to the races, because that just allows so many other technologies to thrive as well. You have any thoughts on those?
Yeah, so I don't really, just like you, when I hear all these sort of technologies, I'm kind of like, oh, that's fantastic. And like, if it sort of works the way it does, and I try to listen in on like some of the earnings calls. As I was saying to you earlier, like a lot of companies just like throwing the word AI and hoping it's going to pump their stock price, because it seems to be the magic word that, I mean, Nvidia said it went from like 300 something to 400 just like over like a few weeks, which is pretty absurd. But it just brings me back to like that main point, which is like there's a time to be more speculative in things, but when the things that are the most obvious buys in the world, like any idiot could tell you that Bitcoin is going to go up. Any idiot could tell you that Ethereum is going to go up. Not financial advice, obviously, but Like anyone can tell you that, right? Like, and it's obvious. If someone told you, "Hey, Apple's a great company," you go, "Duh." Same with Tesla. But like, if I told you some random one, you wouldn't be comfortable with it yet, right? And usually, it's with those that people sort of get the biggest payoffs, right? So there's sort of like a tension where people feel like, "Oh, I need to sort of get like the obscure coin, like Pepe or whatever, because that's gonna give me my 1,000x that I really need." But what people fail to understand is we get, what we just went through. I know it's going to sound weird, but this is actually one of the biggest opportunities of your lifetime. These market corrections don't come by like every year, they come by once a decade typically. We had a bit of it happen due to the pandemic, but that was a very black swan event. Typically, you'll see this every 10 years. And every 10 years, the smart money has been selling and taking profits near the tops of like the market, and they were buying the dip nonstop, and that's how they really made generational wealth. So my sort of like my, because I can't give advice to people, but my sort of approach is, I'm like in my 30s now. I only have a few more of these left for me. Every single time that I'm in this opportunity, I will spend most of my money sort of like from my paychecks buying the dips on these things, on the obvious stuff, because that's a no-brainer, and that way I know I'm going to make money. And then once those have reset, the ones that are more speculative will still be there, and that is typically what is bet on in a bull market, not a bear market, because you want to make sure you get like the low-hanging fruit. So when Apple was sitting at $110 in December, it was such an obvious buy. When Tesla was sitting at $100 in December, obvious buy. Meta was sitting at $80. It's like 300 now. It was at $80. Everyone knows these companies. I'm sitting here wondering why everyone's surprised that it went up 200%. You know this is going to happen. Look at the companies that are in day-to-day life and that nothing has really changed. That's the time to sort of grab. And then the same thing happens for crypto. You got Bitcoin, you got Ethereum. These are obvious. Then you got your big altcoins, right? You got like Matic, AVAX, whatever, like Cardano, XRP, all that stuff. And then, only then, when liquidity starts going to the meme-ish coins, the less or micro cap coins, that's your opportunity to make your big, 10, 100x, whatever, but you can use the profits of what you've gained on what was so easy and simple and obvious. So
Definitely, definitely. That's great advice. And thanks again to the people that are commenting out there in the chat. We've got the trading room, Umar L, Sargent. Love you guys. Hope that you're getting some alpha here. And I wanted to drop a little bit right now. So let's see if I can get my graphic to work here.
It's time to drop some alpha.
nice.
All right. So I was out on the bridges and I was taking a look at what's going on with the Optimism bridge right now. And I know that Base just launched, and I know that there was a rug the other day on the ball token, but you can see how Optimism Gateway has really just catapulted itself. I love coming out here to DeFi Llama because it is the best source of alpha in all of blockchain. And if you really want to get some detailed info on what's going on and what the trends look like, you can see, guys, that Optimism Gateway jumped from, a bridge that wasn't doing much at all to number one. The one-day change, 17,000 or 1,700%. Stargate was the number one bridge for the longest time, and then Arbitrum was right after it. But Optimism now is starting to get a lot of TVL. A lot of money starting to transfer over to Optimism. That's going to create a lot more fees on Optimism. That's going to create a lot more excitement, and they're going to be building a lot more on it. It's one of the easiest blockchains to build on. It's completely open source, and there's going to be a ton more utility that comes to the Optimism chain. In fact, most chains right now that are on ETH layer 1 are building on Optimism. So I think that this going to be probably a really great play. Go take a look at it if you haven't been on Optimism. One of the best ways to get out there is just use the bridge, go try some things. It's like Arbitrum. If you haven't been on Arbitrum yet, I know that some of you are playing Dragon's Crossing and other things. Optimism's out there. Give it a try, but that's the alpha that I saw just coming out here to DeFi Llama and taking a look at what's going on. You've got the ZK Sync bridge. Of course, I love ZK technology. I think it's going to take over at some point, but I found out, which I didn't know before, that the Optimism is going to allow for ZK tech to be built onto chain. So even though it's an optimistic rollup right now, and for those of you that don't know the difference between optimistic rollups and a ZK, Optimistic rollups take 7 days to settle. So anybody can challenge a transaction for up to a week. So if you didn't know that, that's the one thing that when you're bridging stuff back and forth on an optimistic rollup, to get it off, it takes a week. That's the interesting thing about Optimism. On ZK, it's instant. Finality happens within a few seconds, and you can bridge back and forth. There's no time to challenge it. So that's why ZK is so important. But Optimism, which I didn't know before, is going to allow for ZK tech to be built on top of it. So you're not only going to have Optimism, but you're going to have zero knowledge is one of the things on Optimism. So makes me a little bit more bullish on the space there when we come to that as well. Are you any particular blockchain that you're really looking at now, Brown Jet, that you're like, hey, this one might have some value out there that people don't know about?
So the one that I think is, I mean, I've always liked sort of the Cosmos system, sort of like, Atom, to a lesser extent, like Osmo and some of the other smaller coins or tokens. I think it's nice because of sort of like the way they remove the need for bridges. I personally hate bridges because they kind of give me like the ick, right? Like especially after what happened with Harmony. But I also see sort of the value in it. Atom is probably one of the ones that like I think can do very well in a bull market. I'm loving what I'm hearing, what you're saying about Optimism. Like I think I've used the Optimism, one of the Optimism bridges of some sort, because as part of like the airdrop sort of qualification mechanism that I have for ZK and Starbridge and everything else, I think I had to use this for one of those. When it says up 1,700% here, that is sort of the volume, right?
So the 1 day change in volume. So from
Yeah.
yesterday to today, it's gone up 17x. So, if somebody was bridging $1 million yesterday, it's now 17 million today. That's quite a change. And that's the nice thing about these different tools that are out there, especially DeFi Llama and some of the other ones, is that it gives you an insight that other people probably don't know. It's like going out to a Bloomberg terminal and being able to see the change in volume on a particular stock. If it changes in volume like 2x or 3x, you're like, oh, somebody must know something. When you have a 17x change in volume, you're like, okay, well, what's going on over there? Obviously, we had Coinbase build their chain out there. Base is now functioning. People are going out there to try to get different airdrops and stuff. But when I see things like this, that I just my spider senses peak up, and I'm like, okay, I gotta take a look at this, because somebody's going to be bridging out there, and something's going to happen at some point.
Yeah. So then, do you hold Optimism token?
The one interesting thing, and I talked to several people in Las Vegas about this at George's event last week. It's a governance token, so it's like Arbitrum. It's like the other governance tokens, even Uniswap. The tokens themselves don't have value other than the fact that you can vote on the protocol. So with that, there's a little bit of a trepidation that I have, because it doesn't have any value accrual to it whatsoever. It's like a stock, right? So the stocks, as people probably know, owning a common stock allows you to vote, but it doesn't allow you to get a piece of the profits of that company unless it distributed a dividend or something like that. But once you're getting a dividend, you basically have a fee accrual system there. So people own that stock so that they can get that dividend. That's the same thing with tokens. Either the token's accruing fees from the protocol, and therefore they're getting distributed to the token holders, or it's not, and you're just a governance token. So right now, being a governance token, Optimism, Arbitrum, Uniswap, several other ones that are out there, they do have value to them. The question is how much value, and how much value is going to accrue to them over time. So I think that Optimism's got a lot of legs to run, and it's probably going to see much higher than lower values at some point here in the near future. But how big those are is all going to be based solely on supply and demand. If somebody's got to be willing to buy it for a higher price than you're willing to sell it for. So that's my only reservation right now when it comes to some of these tokens. How about you?
No, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I bought a tiny bit of ARB, so I get what you mean. I think you had a massive airdrop. My airdrop was somewhat small because I didn't. I mean, to be fair, it changed my behavior. I started sort of learning how to farm early, or doing it earlier. But I completely agree with you. Like, sort of, even now, like when I look at some of these tokens, I'm not interested in sort of having voting rights, because just like in the long scheme of things, unless it sort of qualifies me for something more important, I sort of trust sort of the people who own the majority of the tokens to figure out what the decisions that they think are best for that ecosystem. Typically what I'll do is, like, because I think Optimism is on Ethereum, right? Does that the thing? Like it's the next layer two, right? Because like
Yes,
Arbitrum.
Optimism and Arbitrum are both optimistic layer 2 rollups on the top of Ethereum.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, like I just like having ETH. Like I probably buy some ETH on Optimism potentially later. But like I have this thing where like after I hit a certain amount, I go to like the sort of the next chain and sort of build some stuff there. So like even with DFK, like if you look at my account, you probably started noticing as of today, I've only and I'm not, most people I'm going to assume aren't looking at my account. But if you do look at my account, you'll start to notice I'm just accumulating USDC now in the actual chain, because now it's like, okay, well, I don't really have anything I want to bridge to, so I'm just going to keep allocating, making a bigger and bigger bag, and like, yeah. So that's pretty much my thoughts here. Can I ask you a question, Christian?
Sure.
What have you been doing with DeFi Kingdoms lately?
So I am so bullish on summoning that I really don't think that there's a whole lot more that needs to be said. As you guys know, I'm over 3,000. I'm approaching 3,500 heroes, and I continue to summon on a daily basis. I love the DeFi Kingdoms helper app. I know that we've talked about that before. Zealous, Coolio, the whole gang over there has put together a really great tool. And not only that, they've actually figured out how to reduce gas fees, which we all love. So super bullish on that. I did the calculations, and I kind of went through things, and I know Tad did a video on this, which I really enjoyed. The Gen Zero versus floor level hero, kind of the way that people look at it, I think, is just a little bit different than I do. I look at it like you do, where Gen Zeros to me are going to hold the best value. So I can buy Gen Zeros for 2,000, a really good Gen Zero for $2,000 to $3,000, which I feel is a bargain, because when I first got into the game, they were 6,000 to 8,000 just for a really bad floor level Gen Zero, and then they got up to 100,000, and we all know that the prices came down a lot. And now they're back down to 1,200 to 1,500 for a floor Gen Zero, but over time, there's just a finite amount. And I think that you're spot on that whenever you have a finite amount of mythics or, elite heroes or transcendent heroes, those are the ones that are going to have the best value over time. Gen Zeros to me hold the best value right now. Land at some point probably will, but until that utility comes to land, I'm not going to invest in it. I know that there's players out there that have, and I really think that they're going to probably do well over time. I know that Raf and Neindorf got a piece for the ADFK guild, and Ogre has a couple pieces of land, and there's several other of you in the community that own land, and I think that's awesome. There's probably several people that have lost their land or don't have any access to it anymore, or people that aren't in the game that probably might regret that at some point. But I think that realistically, to me right now, summoning two Gen Zeros together, and I know that you consulted with Sargent about this as well, taking your money and putting them into a couple of Gen Zeros is not going to be the worst place that you can put it, especially in this bear market. And once we start to see a little bit more of a bull run, we'll start to see what happens with the Gen Zero market, with the land market, with everything that goes on, right? The Jewel token. I think that there's going to be a ton of value there, and I'm really excited about that. I bought my first Gen Zeros about 5-6 months ago now. I won one in the raffle, the last summoning raffle. So I have 6 Gen Zeros. They're all pairs of Legionnaire Scholars. They all have at least 2 genes. One has 3 gene pairs together so that they mutate more often than not. And I feel like that's the best value right now to me for DFK. How about you? What's your highest beta play right now when it comes to DFK?
It's definitely Gen Zeros. Like, I was actually very close to pulling the trigger on the 8th one. Literally like an hour ago. There's a pirate. I think it's like 1,400 US sitting on the tavern. One of the really cool things you can do that sort of people don't realize is the Gen Zero prices are cyclical, and we don't really have a really good way of sort of tracking that. There's no tool, but as somebody who like visits sort of DFK Quester every day and filters out for 0 for Gen, right? I see the price and I see the floor, and like it is typically gone from there are 2 different price points. There's the OG Gen Zeros, which I'd say range right now low end 1,500. Then their floor is like 2,000 to 2,100. Like that's sort of the cycle that we're in. So it fluctuates like $500 or $600, and then the non-OG or like the expansion ones, they're like 11 to 1200. They go up to like 17, 1800 on the floors. So for people who are even looking for a short-term investment, you could sort of buy sort of Gen Zero in whichever sort of OG or expansion, summon with it while you wait, which is like I said, different than stocks and everything else where you're just sitting there staring at it, and get value from it and then sell them after. So I actually did that with a Monk Gen Zero. I bought it for like 1400, sold it for like $1,800 the next day actually, which is like, you know, within 24 hours. And I made like 280 bucks because like there were fees for the tavern, there were fees for me bridging off. I brought some money from Ethereum. Lesson learned. This is why I'm trying to build a bag of USDC on chain as well to help me reduce the swapping fees. What's really cool about all of this is as we get people putting serious things into the bazaar, we can almost start saving on a ton of the swapping fees as well if we get it good enough. Because sometimes the price impact sucks when you're trying to swap a lot, especially when it's like crystals from one token to another.
Yeah, yeah. Is this the pirate you're mentioning? I love DFK Quester for these for the tavern. What's going on right now and all the Gen Zeros. It looks like this Legionnaire is the floor at 99.9, and then this pirate Legionnaire at 110. So minor.
Is it Nifty's one?
Let me get my
Because
back.
like Nifty and like wasn't sort of where is
Yeah,
it?
Nifty 60.
Yeah, he like listed it like almost 2 weeks ago, and like the price. The thing is, the price of crystal has really sort of dumped in the last like month. If you compare it from 1 month ago, we're down like 30%. So like even here, I think it was like down like 15 to 20% since he listed. So that's sort of why like there's a big potential what's it called, like I guess like opportunity, right? With that hero. Let me go
Right.
look it up right now. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
I know
1450.
that
Yeah.
there's two pirates and they're both right next to each other. There's Pirate Legionnaire, Pirate Archer. Interesting to see how the the difference. They're both miners. Level 8, level 6. They're both about the same. I know that you have a more of a you like to go with the I call them like version 1 Gen Zeros that came out with the initial build. The ones the initial classes that they released. The when you're summoning with them, you're obviously going to put a pirate together with a monk, and you're going to try to get that mutation typically. And so, do you try to get the matching pair, or do you just look at it like I'm going to buy this pirate and I'll go hire a monk and try to summon my pair together, and that'll create the highest alpha for you when it comes to the return on investment?
Yeah. I don't make pairs. What I typically do is I've actually taken Gen Zeros I have and found who owns the other half of the pair and go, hey, I have a really good Gen Zero, make me an offer, sort of thing, right? And like sometimes they'll give me like 10,000 crystal plus another Gen Zero for my one, and like if they're like similar in stats, I'm down. I'm okay to do it because and that's the way you sort of generate value for yourself. The other thing is, one of the things I will do, and I sort of always do this, is I'm always looking for the highest EV. So like if I have like a Legionnaire, right? Like so I have one expansion Gen Zero. I won it in the S Jewel raffle, a locked S Jewel. Yeah. Which is weird because I was like 120th on that one, but I was like 30th on the summoning one. I bricked that one, right? Which is so weird, right? Because it was 75 on each.
Right.
And I was sick to my stomach because I was setting alarms. Like my wife thought I was sick because I was waking up at like 1 a.m., 4 a.m. every day for like a week, and she was like, "What's wrong? Are you like, is something wrong?" And she thought I was going to the bathroom. No, I was sneaking off to get some summons in before the cooldowns were over on some of these things and going back, right? But
Yeah.
and after all that, I bricked. But if you look at rentals in the tavern or in the portal, scholars are actually very cheap, right? All the expansion heroes are cheap to rent, and the reason is their progeny is very cheap. Like expansion progeny is not worth as much, right? I think it's 150 crystal if you get a Legionnaire, Seer, Berserker, or a Scholar. So what I'll do is my Legionnaire, I could rent a seer potentially for like 60 or 80 jade or something. Instead, I would just go pay like an extra 5 crystal or 5 jade, sorry, and just rent a warrior, because the warrior floor is like 340 crystal, and
Ah,
that's actually more than the shapeshifter I would get if, or not the shapeshifter, the bard that I would get if they combined well. So because all those progenies are worth less, what I'll do is I will rent expansion heroes, whatever the cheap ones I can find, with that Legionnaire, and then I give myself over like a what, like 35 or 40% chance of hitting that one. Sometimes I hit the Legionnaire. Today I hit a Legionnaire, I hit a rare. So thankfully it like broke me even, right, on the summoning cost. But
yeah.
like typically, like my ROI is like over 100% on my Gen Zero summons, and the same thing goes like if I have a wizard and there's a priest for 150, and there's I don't know, like a monk for 130, or not 130, sorry, a monk for like 90. I'll just pick the monk for 90, and because the EV calculation actually shows me it's because the odds are like 14%, and when I was to do it the other way, the amount of money I'd make on a summoner is just not worth it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. That's the kind of the way I looked at it too. When I first got in, I got one Gen Zero and started hiring with my Gen Zero, but then I found the one that complemented it almost perfectly, right? So those gene pairs are huge when it comes to mutations. So you just want to get, and by gene pairs, guys, I mean if you're not familiar, you're looking at the active and passive genes and matching the basic ones with the basic twos, and then making sure that you can mutate those genes. So if you match a basic one with a basic two, you've got like a 15% chance of getting an advanced one, and that'll give you the highest value that you can on that actual hero itself when you're doing the summon. So those are the things I didn't really know about when I got into DFK. And as I watched Mythic Squad and I watched those guys over there, work their magic and make these incredible heroes over time. And I know Be Easy has been throwing his heroes into the pit left and right, and it still kind of gives me a little bit of like the shakes every time I think about it. I can't sacrifice my heroes like that just because there's no real PvP out yet. I know that it's coming at some point. He'll probably have an insane team, because I remember going out there and taking a look at his wallet, and he had a Dread Knight with a transcendent ability. I wasn't sure if it was Resurrection or Second Life, but I was like, dude, you've got a Dread with a transcendent ability. I mean, that's not fair. It was like, come on, man. I know that WoWie was probably like, oh my gosh, this is like the ultimate, but I'm kind of waiting for the PvP to be finalized, and I'm hoping that we'll see like that'll be the time when I start searching the tavern and figuring out like which one of these heroes is going to be the ultimate for PvP. Although every time Bolon gets on conversation, he says don't ape into broken mechanics. I just know that some of these heroes obviously are going to have a lot bigger advantage over other ones, and I'm excited to see which ones. I almost got that feeling that we're going to see something that we weren't expecting. Like the monks got this ability that like, okay, the monk can do this and kick the crap out of a Dread Knight. That would be, I mean, I know you're a big Magic the Gathering player, and I know that every single hero should have a counter to, another one. And I think that they'll probably throw in some twists and turns. How do you feel about something like that?
I completely agree. I think, I mean, even in the sort of most basic form, like Pokemon, right? Like if you look at the original three Pokemon, right? Charizard, Bulbasaur, Venusaur, they each sort of were good against one, bad against the other, and there was sort of triumvirate, right? Like where, if you picked water, you were weak against grass, but you were good against fire. So it became like a rock, paper, scissors kind of metagame. And I'm not saying that like it'll be fully like that, but I think there will be heroes where like you just can't show up with level 20 Dread Knights and just sweep PvP. Because right now that's actually what's sweeping the duels. What I've actually gone in every season and looked at the top leaderboard for every single sort of area and checked the wallets and seen the heroes everyone has, and they're all the same. They're all either like level 20 dreads, level 20 goons, level 20 sages. Those are like by far what's been dominating. And if that's the case, this would end up being like a pay to win kind of game, right? Which is what I think they want to move away from. Like if they want to have strategy, there's no strategy in just submitting, okay, well, everyone buys Mythic Dreads and sort of gets the let's get going, right? That's not really much of a game. You know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
think they will find a way to like make Dreads weak to certain things, but then what they're weak to, there's obviously going to be a counter there too, because once again, if everyone starts going toward whatever beats Dreads, then people will start going for what beats that, and then you have like a balanced metagame. I think that's probably the healthiest place we can go to. I don't know sort of how all this will work, but I'm sure like, equipment, pets, and there's going to add tons of dimension into all of these things. I also, I hope potentially that maybe there'll be handicaps with certain heroes as well. Maybe that could be a thing, right? Like where if you use a dread, maybe you can't use items or something. Who knows what it is, right? Like there's got to be something that balances it. In the absence of balancing, like you're just telling people, hey, buy the best cards, buy the best heroes. Like even in Magic the Gathering, where you have like Black Lotus and stuff in older formats, there are like I remember being like a 21, 22 year old, and I showed up with a anti artifact deck, and everyone was spending thousands of dollars on their expensive artifacts. My deck cost like $30, and I was beating all of them. I would win $1,000 tournaments just because I show up specifically targeting what they were doing. And once I started doing that, people started adapting because all of a sudden they didn't want this like little brown kid just showing up to these tournaments, not doing my like rites of initiation and just taking their money, which is what I was doing,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the thing about most games, right? As long as you've got the ability to win by using your brain, right? By being a little bit smarter than the other player, by checking out and seeing what's going on, that's what makes it fun. And I do think that there's going to be some value to having a really great PvP team, like having that Dread Dragoon Sage combo, like you said, Mythic. Those are going to be, great to play PvP. But I also too think the PvE element's going to come in. I know Hubert talks about that on just about every AMA, that he's more excited about the PvE element. I think we all are, right? Because I'm a dungeon crawler by nature. I like to go in when I like to go in, go battle against the bosses, go try to like win the game. Talking to Grady when we were in Vegas, he was just like so stoked. I know he stayed up for 2 nights straight playing Dragon's Crossing because he's like, yeah, I'm going to get, and he had the number one hero, or he had the number one guy on there, but he got killed on the very last one because he was trying to kill the boss on level 17 when he probably should have just went back and rested. But he's like, yeah, I'm going to do this in the least amount of time so that I'm number one on the leaderboard. And I'm like, that's what you want in a game. It's just to have that ability to figure it out and have a little bit better, insights than your competition, and just say like, okay, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to, make my way through this. And, I love watching some of your posts on Twitter about you playing in these different Magic the Gathering tournaments all over the world, which is super cool. But I know that you're excited about that as well. Are you more excited about PvE than PvP?
I like PvE, but like for me, like I have very little frame of reference. So I think of like, like sort of wandering in the grass and like finding Pokemon, right? Like at a certain point, I feel like it becomes a little repetitive. And like, there's a lot of people here, like, I want to throw down with in the DFK community, so there's some trash talkers. There's also like, friendly rivalries where like, hey, like after all this time, we've been like talking for 2 years. Let's jump in the arena. Let's see who wins, right?
Right.
Especially now that Fight Club is gone, and like like the entire idea of like duels or the mini game duels, it's not really that fun, right? Like I do it because it's like farming items, right? And like those chaos stones that you get from there, they're like worth like 9 jewels now. I was selling them for like 8 or 9 jewels in the bazaar yesterday, which is incredible, right? But outside of that, like what? It's just rolling dice. Oh, great! I submitted a better hero than you, so I'm like 60-40 to win, and now the dice was in my favor too, so I won, right? Whereas here, you're actually like, okay, what skills do I want to use? How do I want to actually? It's kind of like an RPG, So I think PvE will be fun. I think if they make it like some really cool items that you can find that like you'll need for crafting and all this other stuff, and you sort of make it worthwhile, sure. But if it ends up being like questing where like I don't even look at what I open anymore in quests, right? Like have you gotten to that point yet? When you like I know for 3,000 something heroes, you're not manually questing that much. I manually quest like 20 heroes now or 30 heroes. Everything else is done by JFK Helper. But like when I do it, I don't even check. What's the point? Like you got like Moshka Rune probably, right? I won 50 cents, which, I'm actually excited to get that, but like there isn't really much to sort of look forward to after you've done it for 2 years,
Right. And I agree with you. It's, now that DFK Helper's automated most of that, I think that the team is going to look into, getting the little items in there that we really want to have happen over time. The, The questing will be automated. Lots of these things will be automated a lot better once we have the Holiday wallet, and I'm excited about that. So that'll allow things to happen much easier, much more efficiently than they have in the past. And that was one of the things when I first got into DFK is that excited me, right? Was I thought this is a cool game that allows us to be smarter than the average person. And I remember going out to Serendale, and that was when tiers was the only quest you could do. But tiers were $4. And I was like, oh, this is great. I can take my heroes and I can go out there and find tiers, use your stamina. So 3 times a day. But I was doing kind of like you were during the summoning. I'd wake up at like 3 a.m. to go out there and like send my heroes to the wishing well to go find an extra tier, and I was like, why am I doing this for $4? But then I realized that it's that way that we're wired, right? It's that I want to win this game. I want to go out there and I want to get the quickest ROI on my heroes. I want to take these tiers and make money from them. I want to do these little in-game things. And I think that once we start having those quests that allow us to go out into different parts of the realm, like Crystal Vale isn't even opened up yet. Do you remember when they opened up Serendale and all of a sudden the clouds parted and then it was like, oh my God, the realm is enormous. There's land everywhere. I can't wait for that to happen.
100%. And you know what? Like, it's only a matter of time, right? Like, it feels slow when you're looking at it day to day, but this is why I always tell people, like, have other hobbies that like consume you as well. Like I spend maybe like a couple hours on DeFi Kingdoms a day, and like here and there, not all at once. I go to the gym, make YouTube content, go on Twitter. I'm sure people can find other things to do and diversify, right? I think diversification is super important. Like Christian, you're super bullish on DeFi Kingdoms. Would you say that you're 100% all in on DeFi Kingdoms?
No, obviously, Ethereum is by far my highest conviction, and I love Ethereum more than anything. But like I said earlier, I think ETH can probably 10x in the next bull run. If everything goes according to plan, Jewel could be 100, 1,000. In some people's minds, it could be even more than that. And I don't want to, I want to temper my expectations and your expectations a little bit, but I do agree. The projects that make it through this bear market are going to be extremely beneficial in the next bull run because people are going to FOMO in. They're going to see this really cool graphics. They're going to see the things that have been built over the last 2 or 3 years, and they're going to say, I want a piece of that. When there's a more buy pressure than there is on the sell pressure, everything's going to explode. I was so shocked when Jewel hit $20 originally that I was like, oh my God, having 1,000 Jewel in the jeweler and watching it go from $3 to $20 was just like, wow, this is insane. And that was before there was anything to do. So yeah, I do think that, having some your moon bag, right, as Jewel or Crystal or Jade or whatever that is, and saying, okay, I'm going to keep 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 of this. That's great. But also to look at the fact that, yeah, Ethereum and Bitcoin are going to be the first 2 to start. So why not get some of those while you can right now too? Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense.
And you know what? Like, this is sort of, I think you referred to it when we were in 3XP and we were talking to Sargent about so Sargent would invest in gardens, right? And I'm not saying gardens are bad, but that's very replaceable. Whereas the Gen Zeros are not, and Gen Zeros pay very similarly in APR, and they're very elastic. So the pricing really skyrocket with the value of DeFi Kingdoms. And these are the bored apes of our ecosystem. Let's not kid ourselves, right? The reason I haven't touched land, like you mentioned earlier, is there's no utility yet, but there's also the supply is they've constrained it because they haven't given it out yet. Once they start giving it out, I'm sure people will be looking to sell it fast, and that's my opportunity to buy some. But just like you and I didn't buy Gen Zeros when they were $100,000. My first Gen Zero was 2,100 US, right? Baby Punch sold me it, and I sold it for I don't know, 47, 4,800 USD in February this year without after fees. There's huge opportunities in this game where people can make money without relying on it to go up. But I'm also I'm hoping DeFi Kingdoms does very well because my account is literally has been groomed for this. So I'm ready. But at the same time, I'm trying to make this account as much house money as possible so that I've taken all the risk for me, and then I don't care what happened. I can just let it ride,
Yeah. There's just so many opportunities right now when it comes to the crypto space. I'm so bullish about so many different projects. And again, I love going out to DeFi Llama. This is the reason why that I'm so bullish on Ethereum. It's like the total value locked, and people really don't understand what total value locked means. That means that all of this money came into Ethereum first, right? So 57% of every single dollar that's locked in blockchain is on ETH. And then you've got Tron, which is all Justin Sun. I think that's his $5 billion or whatever it is. Binance has got a bunch now, but then everything else is just a little tiny sliver, including Avalanche and DFK chain. So, when it comes down to it, guys, take a look at what the big boys are. I mean, you've got like Ethereum, which has got almost all of the value to it right now. That doesn't mean that one of these other chains can't come up and overtake it at some point, but that just means that's where the money is. So those are the things that are going to run first in the next bull run, and they're going to be the things that survive the best when they go into a bear market. So when you look at things like that, it's just it's a no-brainer, right? You look at it like, okay, great, I can park my money here in ETH, and now that I can stake my ETH, okay, I'm getting another 4% on top of it, right? I can buy Lido. I can get some STETH, and I can go and stake that into one of the decentralized exchanges, get like 10%, and it's just like it's a no brainer for me right now to take some money out every once in a while, put it into the bank. It's so weird because I used to think that Anchor on Luna was my savings account, right? I don't know if you ever used Anchor, but I was like, I'm getting 20% on my UST, and I loved UST because it was one of the only decentralized stable coins. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take my money and put it into UST, then park it in Anchor. I'll get 20%. This is a great retirement plan. And I know that Grady and some of the lots of other people got rugged by the Luna project. But when it comes down to it, I like ETH is going to be around forever. And if I can get any type of return on my ETH, I'm all for it. That's where you get that compound interest, which, I know that Warren Buffett says is the 11th wonder or the 8th wonder of the world, whatever it may be. So yeah, I love the fact that we can use our tokens to increase our earning potential. And ETH to me is still by far the best, the number one. I mean, can you imagine putting your money in the bank, your US dollars or your Canadian dollars, and then not only having the like 3 or 4% interest that you get, but also having the dollar go up like 2x or 3x or 10x? Like, oh my God, that would be so cool. And that's what I feel like ETH is right now.
So you stake your ETH, right? Like, where do you do it?
Well, basically almost all the pairs that I have right now in any type of LP is with staked ETH or wrap staked ETH. So even on Arbitrum, you can just convert it into staked ETH really easily, and that way you're getting that return on your ETH, and then you can pair it with ETH. So you can take two staked ETH pairs. So you can take Frax ETH, and you can take Coinbase ETH, and you can take Lido ETH, and you can wrap them together, put them into Uniswap, and just get the fees from that, and then also to get the interest on it. So that's one of my favorite things to do right now, is just to take some of my staked ETH, wrap it, put it into, and so you don't have any impermanent loss too, because you're basically taking two staked ETH products, putting them into Uniswap, and just collecting fees from it when people are trading back and forth.
Right. No, that's really cool. Like one of the things that I want to get better at is like staking more of my tokens. Like I've sort of avoided staking it because of not so much the risk, but like some of the platforms also charge you like tons of gas to do it, especially up front. So like you've really got to have a sort of long-term horizon, and like I'm still not sure what my short-term plans are like on any sort of rip. Like if the price rips on it, Ethereum, how much of it am I going to hold versus how much of it am I going to swing, right? Because like I think based on my strategies, I like having kind of a mix of both, not just one or the other. So everything has like a price to it.
Yeah, definitely. No, and we're headed for the Bitcoin halvening here, which is going to be in April of next year. At least it looks like that. So once the halvening happens, it's usually about a 5 to 6 month lag time, at least from historic performance, before tokens start to hit their all-time highs again. We saw it last cycle. Bitcoin halved in May. Unfortunately, we had the pandemic right around then, so things were a little bit distorted. But right then in December, 6 months after, Bitcoin started to rip and went from 10,000 to 40,000 in December, and then up to 60,000+ in January. And it was my first cycle to kind of see that, and I was just like, wow. If historic performance is any indicator, then Bitcoin's in for a really fun time next year, and then ETH to follow, and then all of these other coins that have value to them, any sort of value whatsoever, are going to be really interesting to see. I mean, I'm excited about that. I don't know. When did you get into crypto originally? Was it during the last cycle?
2017 with XRP. But like, what I would say here is I think you make a very good point. I tell sort of the people I coach, don't just take my word for any of these things. You have like we have YouTube, we've got tons of documentation from the last like 10, 20 years, and crypto hasn't been around like long enough, but you can look back and see like how things have gone. Like price trends tend to follow a certain cycle. So people always seem to think the world's ending and that this time's going to be different. This time, like my wife was telling me this. She's like, oh, I can't put money into the S&P. I was talking about this in like December when the S&P and NASDAQ were doing terribly. I'm like, look, put your money in here. Like, you don't have to buy the stocks I'm buying, but at least put it here. And she's like, no, I'm putting my bank account, because it's safer. And now, like, NASDAQ is up like 35% this year. SPY is up 25, right?
Right.
The thing is, this time won't be different because sort of the market always has these ebbs and flows. You have periods of euphoria, periods of dysphoria, right? We've gone through sort of the cycles, and if you haven't been through it already, or like, some people join in the middle of like the bear market, right? Like, you joined when you joined and it couldn't have happened any other way. But the reality is the information still exists. And the next time you go through it, you'll know. But to sort of benefit on where you are right now, I'd recommend those of you to sort of watch crypto videos from a year ago, 2 years ago. Watch how things were like in the bull run. Watch how it was like in the previous bear market where everyone's like, oh my God, things are going to zero. And look at those tokens, how well they've done. And like compare their bear market lows back then, Cardano at like 1 cent, to the bear market lows right now of Cardano at like 30 cents or 29 cents, right? And everybody's like losing like their mind. I think, there's price trends are so important to watch, especially when you look at these assets, because this time will not be different, right? Like, and the beauty about crypto as well is there's so much money in the space when it is doing well that even the worst projects do well. So if you think if the worst project's going to do really, or the bad project will do very well, then the projects that like people used to be bullish on are going to do very well. They're going to find out about stuff like, DeFi Kingdoms and Jewel. And if you have the option to, invest in Jewel versus like Pond, right, or some other garbage token, this is like a gem. This is actual game, there's actual utility, there's everything else. I think that's what people seem to miss. It's when liquidity comes, liquidity will be looking for great opportunities, right? The first opportunity is Bitcoin. The next opportunity is Ethereum. The next opportunity is those high cap altcoins. And after that, it's all the gems in the space in between.
Exactly. So, yeah. Well said. Well said. I think that, one of the things that I've been looking at too is since pets have been out of favor, and I was just looking at the floor again today, I've been buying pets. I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent, but I just feel like when something's out of favor in DFK or it's not being talked about too much, I go out and buy it. So I was buying heroes. I was buying sages and dragoons that had 0 summons back when they were 60 crystal. And, I knew that at some point they'd have some value to them. And obviously once the dark summoning came out, everybody wanted them. And now they're, they're 400, 500 crystal, which crystal has gone down, but at least the price of the heroes that I bought is, in comparison wise, went up almost 10x, which was nice. But now that pets are, to me, it boggles my mind when assets are so undervalued right now. And guys, don't get me wrong. Some of these floor pets are not worth having, but usually what I come down here and then I search on things like the crafting rarity bonus, right? So when I come to the crafting rarity bonus and I'm looking at it, I go, oh my gosh. Okay, so this guy at some point is going to be able to craft these leather and they're going to have at least a rare crafting bonus. Then maybe I want to increase it even a little bit higher from that. So, I come out and I go like, all right, let's see what the actual ones are with Mythic. All right, 340. This is probably Mosh's because he always prices his right around 350. But let's see. Yep, Mosh. So
ding, ding,
he always gets his pets and he moves them at the. But look, you can get a mythic crafting bonus right here, which we don't know what's going to do yet, but we know it's probably going to have a pretty decent multiplier to whatever that craft is, and you can get them for these incredibly low values. And not only that, but I always come out to the combat and I check the combat as well just to see. Look at that. That's probably Mosh as well. 349. He does that all the time. It's so funny to me. So, you got your mythic combat bonus, which we know everybody's going to want to have. They're going to want to have the mythic pets with the combat bonuses that are going to do things. And I know that you're bullish on, the pet utility as well. You've got your mythic pets. You were the one that had your winning Wednesday where you talked about the experience bonus and how you can use pets to level up your heroes a lot more inexpensively than if you were just trying to stamp pot them all the way up to level 20. So, why don't we finish up with that? What's your favorite pet right now?
Yeah, so it's not so much the pet, but it's a foraging or a fishing pet with that ability. I think it's called efficient. I've made thousands of crystal doing this. So I have a couple people who like to rent. For me, I think 2 pets out right now. I get like a ton of crystal. I don't want to say the rates because I give different rates depending on the person. But basically, it's very well worthwhile for both of us because they save a ton of money on their stamina vials. I mistakenly bought this for gardening, but gardening is way worse because you have to wait the entire time for the gardening quest to be over. So those, like, it literally is a super painful experience for somebody to do that. Whereas if you did it the other way, you could sort of gain. You know what I'm saying? So because, like, if you attach a gardening pet, like it's only good for gardening to give that experience boost. So someone tried it and was like, yeah, I don't want to do this. It sucks. But my recommendation is, like, these are ways you can make money in the game, right? Like, looking at sort of the pet bonuses that are out there, I think it's this one and the APR bonus too. I think there's one out there. I think you talked about this before, where you can like maximize on your gardens by selecting there's like a pet boost or something that maximizes your garden return, right? Your APR.
Yeah. So the skilled greenskeeper is my favorite, and all it's doing is adding that additional, the additional points to your gardening skill. So for example, this one's a 20, or a 21. So you're getting 21 additional points to your gardening skill, which is going to increase, the amount of items that you get. But more importantly, it's going to increase your power tokens. And you can see this one right here to me is such a great deal because it's 318 crystal, and it's rare. It's got a two star, so it's got a rare combat bonus as well. And then you get into these guys, which are are just a one skilled or a one category bonus, and they're much higher. So this guy right here is a decent buy. These used to be a little bit higher. I don't think people are doing as much LPing as they were in the past, but those were my favorite. And if you come out here with a 3, it's probably still pretty high. I mean, yeah, it was up in the 2000s. So you can get like this guy right here for $19.99, and you're going to increase by 30, 35. I have one that does a 46, and that one by far creates the best when it comes to the LPs. So when I'm getting those power tokens, the power token rewards, the crystal and jewel and the jade and jewel from the gardens for all the LPs that I have, these are the best pets to have by far.
Right. There's something you said like a few minutes ago around you were buying dragoons at like 60, right?
Right.
I'll never forget that date. I think I told you the story, but that was actually, so I was getting married in that period of time, and it was my wedding reception, but we were late to it because so the limo's outside, my wife's there, right? She's all dressed up and everything, and I'm sitting there listening to the AMA, and they're talking about dark summoning, and they're talking about what they're gonna do. And I remember like just going on the tavern. I think I bought like 10 plus dragoon / sages for like 60 to 70 crystal. Listed them for 200. I came back like and checked it like after like we were done all the festivities, and they're all sold. And like, yeah, it had gone up to like 400 or something, or 300 or something. I'll never forget that because my wife was super pissed, especially when I told her why I was late. Like, it was something real. She didn't whatever, but it was like, I'm on DeFi Kingdoms, which I spent probably like 1/3 of our honeymoon doing as well.
Yeah, that's funny. That's so funny. I mean, it's so true though. When you get stuck in something, and that's the reason why, guys, I love DFK, is because you can get so enamored with a certain thing, and it causes you problems in your real life with your significant other or somebody else because you're so excited about like an AMA or playing a game or a certain feature that's going to come out that you're just like, wow, I really want to hear what's going on. And I appreciate that. I loved having you on, Brown Gent. It's always great to catch up with you. I'm sure that we'll see each other at a conference again sometime soon, but people can go out, take a look at Brown Gent's channel. I know too that you're going to start doing some TikToks as well, because that's what everybody told us that we need to do as crypto people. TikTok is the way to go. Anyway, it was a blessing having you on. I appreciate that. Until next time, guys, go out there, make yourself some money in DeFi Kingdoms. Get a chance to go out there and figure out what tokens you want to accumulate and get some jewel. A huge thank you to everyone in the DFK community. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you've smashed that like button and subscribe to the channel, but most importantly of all, share this video with other people that you want to bring into DeFi Kingdoms. And when our community gets larger, we all win. Until then, go out and get yourself some more jewel and enjoy playing DeFi Kingdoms.